The diner was still, eerily still. The only sound came from the flickering hum of overhead fluorescent lights, their cold, artificial buzz painting the silence with tension. Marina stepped forward, the soft squeak of her sneakers breaking the quiet. Then she stopped. A sharp, rhythmic sound cut through the stillness. Click, click. Her eyes snapped toward it, instincts prickling. In the corner booth, a man too polished for a place like this was spinning a coin. Not just any coin. A small, worn disc of dull gold, its edges catching the light with faint floral engravings that felt too delicate for such a hardened world. His presence didn't fit the grease-stained menu or cracked vinyl seats. He was sharp, pressed, and silent. Marina's grip tightened around the warm handle of the coffee pot. "Where did you get that?" Her voice was barely a whisper, but carried the kind of weight that could cut glass. The man looked up slowly, calm, expressionless. "This." He held the coin between two fingers. "Picked it up a long time ago." His tone was casual, but something in his eyes hinted at memory, at consequence. The coin spun again and fell flat on the table with a faint thud. And so did something inside Marina, something long buried beneath years of working double shifts and chasing unpaid bills. Her world didn't just falter. It cracked, ever so slightly. Later, she moved through the diner like a ghost, cleaning the last table with slow, practiced movements. Her bones ached in that quiet, constant way exhaustion does when it's been part of your life for years. The place had emptied out hours ago, but fatigue hung in the air like grease, stubborn and settling deep. She emptied the tip jar into her hand. 3 crumpled bills, a few coins, and a receipt with a doodle of a cat. It wasn't much, but she counted it anyway, as if the act alone could conjure more from nothing. She leaned against the counter, pulled out her phone, and called. "Hey, Jake." Her voice cracked slightly, coated with the effort to sound hopeful. "Yeah, I know, I heard." Another pause. A soft exhale. "Don't worry, I'll figure it out. I always do." She didn't believe it, not entirely. But for him, she said it anyway. When she hung up, she held the money a moment longer before tucking it into her coat. It didn't weigh much, not physically. But there was something heavy pressing down on her. Grief, maybe. Or memory. The bell above the door gave a lazy jingle as a man entered. Jackson. He moved with purpose but no urgency. The kind of man who saw everything and gave nothing away. The cook didn't look up. The other waitress barely noticed. But Marina did. She always noticed the quiet ones. She offered a small, worn smile. "Anywhere you like." Jackson chose the corner booth, the same one with the gold coin still lingering in its memory. He sat with rigid posture, slipping off his gloves with care and placing them beside him. His eyes swept the room, taking in peeling linoleum, a flickering light bulb, and an old photo behind the register of a family long gone. His gaze lingered on Marina, now behind the counter. She moved like someone used to being watched, but who had grown immune to being seen. Jackson tapped the table twice, then stopped. This place wasn't on any spreadsheet, but something about it pulled at him, like a melody he half remembered from childhood. Maybe it was the smell, burnt coffee and oil mixed with something more tender, like sorrow that had settled into the walls. Marina approached, coffee pot in hand. "Top up?" Her voice was light, automatic. Jackson nodded. "Please." She poured with steady hands. "First time here?" He looked up briefly. "Something like that. I'm in the food business. I like to see how places really work. Off the record." She raised a brow, amused. "Well, Murphy's isn't exactly Michelin, but the coffee's hot, and the walls haven't caved in yet." A faint smile ghosted across his lips. She nodded toward his tailored suit. "You know, around here, people only wear that much black when they're coming from court or going to a funeral." He chuckled, quiet and restrained. "Guess I'm neither. Just curious." She didn't press further, topped his cup again, moved down the line. They were two separate lives, momentarily crossing orbits, like planets brushing in the dark. But something lingered. A few minutes later, wiping down the edge of a nearby table, Marina spoke again. Her voice was different now, less guarded. "You ever hear of the Sunset Café?" Jackson shook his head, polite. "My grandparents ran it, just a few blocks from here. Real yellow awnings like sunshine. Not plastic ones, the fabric kind that faded in the sun." Her voice softened, tinged with the sweetness of memory. Window boxes overflowing with petunias. She used to bake apple muffins at 5 a.m. every morning. No matter the weather, they knew everyone's name. After school, kids would come in for hot chocolate, even if they didn't buy anything. It was home. The kind that wrapped around you like a warm blanket. Jackson sipped his coffee, eyes unreadable. Marina gave a soft laugh, more out of habit than humor. "It's gone now. Life happens. People get sick. Bills don't wait." She didn't say who took it. The pain hung between them like smoke, thick and unspoken. Jackson didn't speak, but something in his posture changed, a stillness with weight. "My grandmother," she said, voice lower now, almost reverent, "had this gold coin, passed down through generations, came all the way from Spain, part of her dowry. She used to say it reminded her where we came from, that no matter what, we had roots." Marina leaned her hip against the booth, the past sitting heavy on her shoulders. "When the cafe was taken, the coin disappeared too." She didn't cry. She didn't need to. The silence around her carried all the grief she didn't say out loud. She never spoke of the coin again, not after that day. One day it was simply gone, like the final breath of someone you never got to say goodbye to. Marina exhaled, long and slow, as though the memory itself had weight. It was strange how a single object could carry the bones of a family's entire history, its hope, its losses, its legacy. And now that weight hovered between them, quiet but crushing. Jackson shifted slightly in the booth. His fingers tapped the rim of his coffee cup once, then stilled. There was something thick in the air, not quite anger, not yet sadness. It felt more like the second before a storm cracks the earth open. "They came when my grandfather was dying," Marina said suddenly, her voice flat, stripped of any pretense. "We were already behind, on everything. And then one day, this lawyer shows up, slick suit, dead eyes, hands us a deadline we couldn't meet even if we sold our blood." Jackson didn't flinch, but he stopped breathing for half a second. Marina kept going, steady now, like someone reciting a eulogy they've said too many times. "Some investment firm, no name, no face. Just pressure. Just ink on paper and voices on the other end of the phone saying it's not personal. It's just business." She gave a small, bitter laugh. "Isn't it funny how they always say that? Like if you say it enough, it becomes less cruel." Jackson's hand tightened around his cup. The porcelain creaked quietly under his grip. Marina either didn't notice, or she chose not to. She wiped the counter with slow, tired movements. Ritual more than necessity. They didn't even look us in the eye. The silence that followed wasn't passive. It was dense. It pressed down between them, not with volume, but with meaning. Jackson felt it settle on him like ash after fire. He looked up at her, his gaze fractured now, something inside him coming undone in quiet pieces. Then, with the smallest motion, he reached into his jacket, maybe to pay, maybe to find his words. But instead, something slipped from the inside pocket. Clink. The sound was soft, metallic. The coin struck the edge of the table and rolled, spinning like memory itself, before falling to the floor with a delicate ring that echoed much louder than it should have. Gold catching light. History waking up. Marina froze. Her eyes locked onto it, wide and wild. She bent slowly, reverently, as if approaching something holy or haunted. When her fingers wrapped around the coin, her breath caught. She turned it in her hand, thumb finding the small chip on the edge, the familiar floral curves engraved into the surface. It was hers, the one from the velvet box, the one her grandmother had once pressed into her palm with trembling fingers and whispered prayers. She looked up at Jackson, her voice suddenly sharp, brittle. "Where did you get this?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. Her fingers clenched around the coin, knuckles white, like it might dissolve if she let go. Her voice dropped, low and uneven. "This coin was supposed to be buried with my grandmother." Jackson's jaw tensed. His mouth opened, but the words didn't come. She kept it hidden her entire life. It was the last thing she had from her mother, from Spain, from the café, and then it vanished. The week we lost everything. "I didn't know," Jackson said quickly, desperate now. "I bought it at an estate auction, years ago. I didn't—" Marina's face twisted, caught between disbelief and grief-tinged rage. "An auction?" she whispered, like the word itself was an insult. He nodded, barely. "You've been carrying my family's heartbreak in your pocket," she said, quieter now. "And you didn't even know its name." She didn't sit. She stayed standing at the edge of the booth, like a storm gathering. "You were going to tip me with this?" she hissed, holding the coin up like evidence. "With the only piece of my grandmother they couldn't steal?" Jackson raised his hands slightly, open palms, his voice trembling. "I didn't know. I swear, no!" she snapped. "You should have known, or your father should have." Jackson flinched. That alone said enough. This wasn't some trinket. It was sacred. It was all we had left after people like you bled everything else dry. Her words fell like bricks. Jackson couldn't catch them, couldn't respond. Marina stepped back from the booth, the coin clutched in her palm like it might vanish again. Her steps wavered. She returned behind the counter, gripping the register to stay upright. And then a memory struck, clear, vivid. She was 9. The light in the Sunset Cafe was golden, soft. Her grandmother Rosa hummed as she wiped the tables. Then she knelt down, placed the coin in Marina's small hand and whispered, "Don't ever let this fall into the wrong hands. It carries more than gold." Back in the present, Marina closed her fist around the coin. "I failed you," she whispered. Not to Jackson, but to the memory that held her heart. Then louder, trembling, like a promise meant only for ghosts. "You said it had to stay safe." Now it was back, but not in the way anyone had hoped. Jackson stepped forward, his voice low, almost gentle. "I swear to you, I didn't know who you were. I didn't come here for this." Marina turned slowly. Her breath had steadied, but her eyes were cold now. "And I didn't know who I've been serving coffee to." She stared straight through him. "Looks like we're even." Her hand reached for her apron, one sharp tug. She pulled it free. She walked to the counter and dropped it, slap, onto the surface. Stained, tired, final. "I'm done," she said flatly. "You don't get to sit here, sip burnt coffee, and act curious while carrying pieces of the life your world destroyed." Jackson didn't move. Couldn't. Marina's jaw clenched. "You want service? Go somewhere that hasn't bled for your family's empire." For the first time that night, the diner felt too small, too haunted. Her voice rose, fierce and shaking. "I've been working in the ruins of my family's dream." Heads turned. A man at the counter paused, fork in mid-air. Even the cook leaned from the kitchen window. Marina pointed to the floor, to the booth. "This place, this building, was ours, before the contracts, before the fake smiles, before they drained the life out of two people who only wanted to feed their neighbors." Jackson stood still. His head dipped slightly. His mouth was set, locked against the weight of guilt. "You sat there," Marina continued, "pretending to be just another stranger. But someone like you knew, or someone above you did. And that makes you part of it." The coin glinted in her hand. "Tell me," she demanded, her voice cracking with grief. "Does your empire count how many ghosts it leaves behind?" The silence was thick, not empty, but overflowing with truth. Marina's breath heaved. Then her voice dropped, low and deliberate. "What company?" she asked. "What name signed the papers that took our home?" Jackson hesitated. She took one step closer. Her voice didn't rise, but it sharpened with quiet intensity. "Say it." Jackson hesitated. Then finally, he swallowed. "Arise." Silence. The word lingered like smoke, thick and uneasy. Then, like an afterthought, but it wasn't, he added, "My name is Jackson." Marina's expression changed in an instant, not confusion but recognition. Her breath caught. The name didn't just hit her, it detonated inside her, blowing open doors long shut. "Jackson," she echoed, her voice stunned, hollowed out. "As in, Jackson from Russ?" He didn't respond. He didn't need to. Her body recoiled before her mind caught up. The coin slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a hollow clatter. It was as if even the gold couldn't bear what that name carried. "Russ destroyed my family," she whispered, voice cracking like old wood. "My grandparents, our home, our history." She stared at him. Not the man in front of her, but the shadow behind him. "You're not just some stranger with bad timing. You're the son of the man who erased everything we were." Without another word, Jackson turned, stepped out into the night. The diner's neon light spilled into the parking lot, flickering weakly, uncertain whether to glow or die. Marina followed, steps quick and sharp against cracked pavement. Under the pale glow of a street lamp, he turned. His face, once unreadable, now looked stripped, naked beneath the weight of everything he hadn't said. Marina didn't speak at first. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the coin, her family's last heartbeat, and stared at it like it was both weapon and wound. Then she threw it. It hit his chest, bounced once, and landed between them on the cold asphalt. "Take it," she said, voice shaking. "Take the last piece of what your father turned into profit. You inherited his money, his legacy. Now carry the weight too." Jackson looked down. The coin caught a sliver of streetlight, but he didn't move. "I thought it was gone forever," Marina continued, voice quieter but no less raw. "Turns out it didn't vanish. It was just passed along, from hands of love to hands of convenience." She turned away and walked back to the diner, leaving the coin and everything it represented between them. Jackson sat behind the wheel of his car, hands on the steering wheel, engine silent. Behind him, the diner was dark now, swallowed by shadows, but Marina's voice clung to the air around him. On the center console, the coin gleamed under a dying street lamp. He stared at it, then reached out. His fingers hovered, then closed. It felt heavier now. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't business. This was a reckoning dressed as chance. He whispered to himself, unsure if it was a confession or a warning. This coin wasn't supposed to find me, unless it had to. The city around him slept, but he didn't. An elevator opened silently as Jackson stepped into the top floor of the Russ corporate headquarters. Polished floors reflected overhead lights, and the air smelled sterile, like sealed files and long-buried guilt. He entered the executive suite, his father's office. Nothing had changed, not the marble desk, not the wall of awards, not the silence. Jackson moved to the back, where a hidden safe sat behind a bookshelf of empty promises. The lock clicked open with muscle memory. Inside, rows of files, labeled, stacked, forgotten. He scanned, pulled one, a CQ-099, Martinez property. His chest tightened. He opened it. Contracts, purchase orders, liquidation approvals. And there it was. Sunset Café, stamped across the top. A photo paperclip to the file. Yellow awnings, bright sun, a smiling couple. His stomach turned. Then, folded inside, an old envelope. Yellowed. Fragile. The handwriting was desperate. To Mr. Westbrook, please, I'm begging you. Don't include the coin in the auction. It has no value to anyone but me. It belonged to my mother and her mother before her. It's all I have left. I'll work for free, clean your offices, anything. Just, please. Rosa Martinez. There was no reply, just a red stamp across the auction list. Inventory finalized. No exceptions. Jackson staggered back. This wasn't business. It never was. It was cruelty in a suit and tie. He flipped the page. Internal memo. Confidential. Liquidate all remaining ACQ-099 assets. Personal items included if necessary. Prioritize recovery. Sentiment is not a factor. Photographs spilled from the folder. Rosa and Miguel in front of the café. Shelves filled with wedding china. A detailed inventory. Gold coin, decorative frames, porcelain mugs. Signed. Approved. In his father's ink-red scrawl. Jackson exhaled like something inside him finally shattered. He sat in his father's leather chair, now his. His hands covered his face. No misunderstanding. No accident. A blueprint for devastation. But this legacy, it would end tonight. He pressed the call button. Marcus, wake up the legal team. Sir, I want to transfer full ownership of the Sunset Block, title, deed, every square foot to whom? Marina Martinez. A pause. Longer this time. And the terms? There are none. No clause, no signature, no buyback protection? Jackson stared at the coin on the desk. No conditions, no paperwork from her, no press release. This isn't redemption. He exhaled slowly. It's refusal. I won't carry this forward. Outside, the city remained dark. But somewhere within it, something had changed hands. Not a property, but a beginning. In the dim back room of the diner, Marina crouched over an old storage bin. Receipts, cracked menus, a torn apron. Then, beneath a pile of fading memories, a small wooden frame. Inside, Sunset Café, yellow awnings, hand-painted sign, her grandparents on the front steps, smiling. She sat on the cold floor, hugged the frame to her chest. The coin lay beside her, still, quiet, as if it understood. Tears came uninvited, but not unwelcome. Carmen entered, knelt beside her. No questions, just open arms. Marina leaned into the embrace. I don't even know what to feel, she whispered. Feel it anyway, Carmen said, chin resting on her hair. That's how we survive. And Marina did. A knock on the back door, a courier, silent, an envelope with her name in ink she didn't recognize. Inside, legal documents, title, deed, transfer of full ownership, Sunset Block, no payments, no strings. At the bottom, a handwritten note. This isn't restitution, it's not charity. It's a return, not of money but of memory. I can't undo what was taken, but I won't pretend it never was. No name, but she knew who wrote it. Marina stood in the doorway, the weight of the pages in her hands heavier than any debt. For the first time, someone had given her not closure, but power, and walked away. Later, she stood on the sidewalk facing the diner. The paint peeled. The neon blinked mid-thought. The windows wore a film of time, but she wasn't looking at the building. She closed her eyes. She saw the yellow awnings, the flowers, the laughter, her grandfather's hum, her grandmother's love in every movement. She opened her eyes. The diner hadn't changed, but she had. Marina stepped forward, hand resting on the door frame. She whispered, not to wood or plaster, but to what still lived inside. I'm not bringing it back for revenge. A pause. For resurrection. Inside, the diner was quiet. The sun rose slow and golden through the windows. Marina sat at the corner booth, pulled out her phone, fingers hovering just for a moment before dialing. She wasn't reaching for the past anymore. She was building something new. The phone rang once, twice. Hey, Mateo, it's Marina. I need help. A pause. Her voice carried both grit and vulnerability. I don't have money, not yet, but I have the deed. and I have a reason. That has to count for something, right? There was silence on the other end, then a quiet, steady response. I'm listening. She hung up, breathless but not afraid. Behind the counter, she opened a drawer and found the cracked photo frame. Her grandmother Rosa's smiling face, frozen in time. Gently, Marina wiped away the dust, then placed it behind the register. No speech, no announcement. Just a placement, an anchor. The sunlight caught the glass just right. It wasn't a plan yet, but it was a beginning. And sometimes, a beginning is all a legacy needs. The days blurred, not because they were easy, but because they moved. Marina picked up shifts at a nearby café. Evenings, she scraped paint from old walls with aching hands and watched finance tutorials on a cracked phone. She met a retired contractor in a church basement, filled out grant applications in borrowed clothes, called in every favor she'd earned, and even some she hadn't. Some friends brought tools, others brought stories. Mateo arrived with old floor plans and quiet optimism. The diner began to shift. Walls scrubbed raw, counters sanded bare. Marina learned Excel the old-fashioned way, bar charts drawn with colored pens beside a smudged recipe book. And always, the coin sat close, tucked in her chest pocket. She touched it without thinking, like breath, like memory. Every bruise, every sleepless night whispered one thing back. It won't be perfect, but it'll be yours again. And that was enough. Across the street, Jackson stood under a lamppost, half shrouded in morning haze. Construction noise drifted on the wind, hammering, laughter, dusty jazz from a speaker. He didn't step closer. He just watched. Marina was alive here. Hair tied up, clipboard in hand, voice firm, joy hidden in the furrow of her brow. Her sleeves were rolled high, and she walked like a woman who knew what she was building. Jackson's face had softened. The tension was gone. In its place, quiet, acceptance. From his coat, he pulled a small brown package. Quietly, he crossed the street and placed it by the side door. No knock, no words, just a label. My father's memoirs, the things I choose not to become. Inside, pages marked with deals, dates, margins full of regret. He didn't wait to see if she'd read them. Redemption, he had learned, is quiet. It listens, then walks away. Marina found the package later. She sat alone, unwrapping it slowly. The memoirs felt heavy, not in page count, but in weight. A life built on acquisition and avoidance. On the last page, written in ink slightly darker, a lifetime making money, and no one ever called me good. She closed the book. Then she stood. Across the room, she hung a plaque she'd carved herself. It rested above the counter where the menus used to hang. It read, "We don't sell dignity to buy success. No branding, no slogan, just truth." As the door creaked open with wind, Marina turned toward the space, eyes scanning what was becoming hers again. "Not this time," she whispered. "Not under my name." Paint covered her arms. The walls bloomed in soft yellows and warm creams. The scent of new wood mingled with old memories. Someone played jazz from a speaker tucked near the counter. Marina stood on a stool, frame in hand. Inside, the coin, preserved in velvet, reverent. She sealed the case and stepped down. Jake, her brother, approached with curious eyes. "You sure?" She nodded. "It doesn't belong in a drawer anymore." He looked puzzled. Marina smiled. "It's not just memory, Jake. It's promise." The coin would be seen by every customer. It didn't need a story. It had presence. The bell above the door rang. Mrs. Harlow walked in first, her grandmother's old neighbor. 2 construction workers followed, paint still on their boots. A young mom, hand in hand with her toddler. No grand opening, just warmth. In the case, Rosa's muffins, Apple, made by recipe. No shortcuts. Mrs. Harlow took a bite, froze. Tears welled. "I haven't tasted this since '78, she whispered. "Your grandmother used to give them to me after church, said they kept hearts warmer than sermons." Marina just smiled through tear-glassed eyes and poured her a cup of coffee. This wasn't about recreating the past. It was about letting it walk back in, one plate at a time. At table 2, a man glanced around. "Who helped you pull this off?" he asked gently. Marina pointed, not at a person, but at the coin in its case. "A man who once caused harm," she said softly, "and didn't try to fix it with words. Just did what needed doing, and left." The man nodded. "That's rare." "So was the damage," Marina replied. And in that moment, they understood each other. Not through details, but through weight. Outside, the light shifted. Not a new day yet, but something softer had arrived. Not forgiveness, just peace. The kind you earn without asking. Later, Marina sat at the register. She scribbled something slowly, deliberately, on parchment. Then she framed it. She hung it beneath the coin. "If you've ever lost something that mattered, this is a place to begin again." She stepped back. A family walked in. Teenagers laughed at the window booth, the same booth where Rosa once sat. The coin shimmered above them. Proof. Not that pain hadn't happened, but that healing had. Outside, Jackson stood beyond the window, hands in coat pockets. He didn't enter. He didn't need to. Marina looked back. Their eyes met. No smiles, just recognition. She nodded. He turned and walked away. No gesture, no goodbye, just space. And that was enough. Jake burst in, waving a paper. "The scholarship, full ride!" Marina froze, then ran to him. The towel in her hand hit the floor. She wrapped him in her arms. "She'd be so proud," she whispered. "Ba would be over the moon." They stayed there, knees on the tile, laughing, crying, held together by joy earned through years of pain. Rosa's dream, once folded into flour, now lived in textbooks and lectures. A girl at the counter pointed at the coin. "What's that?" she asked. Marina bent down. "It was my grandmother's. Been through a lot, like us." "Why keep it?" "Because it reminds me to never give up." The girl nodded. "That's cool." Marina stepped across the street. The new sign above the door read, "Sunset Café. Established 1962. Reborn 2025. The building still wore its imperfections, but it stood. "It's not a fairy tale," Marina whispered. "It's consequence made right." Inside, Jackson's office sat hollow. Papers gone, desk bare. Only one thing remained. A bronze nameplate. Etched beneath the title, "Let the next one learn business with a conscience." Jackson read it, then placed it back. He didn't pack anything, just turned off the lights. Not resignation, release. Marina sat by the window, coffee in hand, phone in the other. The Sunset Cafe page was open. She typed, "This isn't just a business, it's a place rebuilt from something stolen, grieved, and reclaimed." She attached 3 photos. The coin. The cafe alive again. Rosa's smile. She hit post, and the story traveled. A young reporter visited. "Have you forgiven him?" she asked. Marina stirred her tea. "I didn't need to. I just needed to build something better. And in the end, sometimes work is the answer." She placed her hand on the coin's frame. "Thank you for finding your way back." She turned to the live stream camera by the door. "If you've ever lost something that mattered," she said, "start again." One step. The coin caught the light. Marina stood behind the counter, one hand on the coin. Not habit, peace. If this story touched something in you, hit subscribe. We tell stories of lost dreams and how they find their way home. Not an ending, an open door.